Ensuring authenticity is a top-level risk and operational priority for food and beverage manufacturers. The threat of food fraud is sharper this year because of several factors, including post-COVID supply chain shortages, the war in Ukraine, and the moral hazard deriving from food price inflation, climate change, and crop issues. We wanted to understand more and asked one of our customers to explain it to us, providing some insight into how an operationally excellent producer manages the risk. David Holt is Head of Supplier Assurance and Technical Excellence at Britvic plc, an international producer of soft drinks, a household name in its own right, and the custodian of a large portfolio of very well-known brands.
Food fraud for us would be authenticity. So where a material has high value, low yield, there is potential risk there for food fraud where a material can be split with another material, leading us to not receiving the material that we've actually paid for or bought. Authenticity is one of the areas that we work in line with food fraud or prevention of food fraud. We've recently had a case where we've got a low yield material, raspberries in particular, where it's a very low yield material, high value, high cost, and our authenticity programme identified that the material had been adulterated before we had received it. From a risk-based approach, we look at the region and the country of the raw material is actually grown in. Where does the crop come from? We look at the supply chain risks from the growers, the pickers, to the processors, the manufacturing. We then take a view of what falls into the high-risk category. That high-risk category, then we spot check that for external analysis for authenticity. At Britvic, we've got robust controls in place for the authenticity management. We are members of the British Soft Drinks Association Authenticity Scheme, which is a non-competitive scheme where the BSDA will test our products on our behalf and other products of other FMCG companies, and they share that report on an annual basis, and they'll identify areas of concern, risk or non-compliance, and the manufacturers of those materials. As Britvic have a risk-based approach to authenticity, so we look at the material type, and we look at the area of growth and manufacture of that material, which then forms our annual scheduled testing programme. We also have customer requirements where a customer will require us to provide authenticity reports for the materials that we use. Another thing that we find really useful is the RASAF report within the IdeaGen platform. So that's the rapid alert system for farm and feed, where we've got our materials and our suppliers linked to that RASAF report, which automatically gives us an early warning of any issue with a raw material that we procure. The processes and procedures that we have here at Britvic for the management and mitigation of food fraud and authenticity is ultimately what has kept us safe, keeps our products safe and keeps our consumers safe. At Britvic, we've had robust processes and practices for the management and mitigation of supply chain risks for food fraud and adulteration. And we've had them in place for many years, and looking to the recent past and into the future, they're more prevalent now than they ever have been. From a material perspective and making claims on pack, when we talk about juice, the European legislation is that juice has to be 100% of the juice. There can be no other material in there, whether it be peel, rind, or the shell of the material. That in itself is a challenge and a risk, where we buy materials from further afield, different continents, where actually that legislation may vary. And again, that forms part of the risk assessment itself. The causes of that type of scenario could be a crop issue, so poor crop yield, through to high costs, so energy costs, cost of living, manufacturing costs, supply chain costs. They're the types of things that could lead to a material being adulterated. We've seen in the recent past where we've had crop failures on materials, oranges, South America. We've seen crop issues there, and that in itself brings higher risk of a material adulteration. Not that we've seen any in that instance, but it's one of the root causes behind adulteration. The most extreme case could be product recall. So if we don't identify that adulterated material in our monitoring and testing program, and that gets through to final product, the worst case scenario is a product recall. I think any starting point should be the risk assessment. Really dive into the likelihood and severity, so the impact of a food fraud event, and you can quite quickly get to a place where you know what mitigating steps you have to put in place. So for me, that starting point has to be the risk assessment. That's where horizon scanning comes in really handy. So what actually is coming, rather than waiting till it's happened, where authenticity is kind of after the event. You've already got the material, or the material is already on its way to you, whereas horizon scanning, you can get a view of what is potentially out there and what is actually potentially coming.